Before I knew it, quite some time had passed, and I could already see the sunset on the horizon. I told my daughter it was time to leave the sea. At that moment, I had a bad feeling about what was about to happen. My husband, Relay, and my mother-in-law, Helen, had vanished, and I heard the sound of a boat revving its engines. To my shock, Relay had boarded the boat and left my daughter and me on the shore. "Hey, why are you leaving us?" I shouted in panic as I tried to swim towards the boat, but it quickly drifted away. I realized chasing after it would be futile, and I might get hurt in the process. Relay's voice echoed back, callously stating, "It's not like we're related by blood anyway, so this should be fine." I was utterly stunned, and Helen, who had been watching from the boat, laughed and said, "Look at that dumb face." Relay shot me a disdainful look, and the boat continued to sail away. My name is Tina, and I'm a 29-year-old housewife. I live with my husband, Relay, and our 5-year-old daughter, Molly. Molly is an exceptionally diligent and talented child, excelling in her studies, sports, and her piano lessons, which she started at the age of 3. She's incredibly adorable and my pride and joy. My life with Molly is a source of happiness, but things haven't been going well with Relay. We met about 8 years ago when I joined the company as a new employee, and Relay, being 1 year my senior, became my mentor during my on-the-job training, OJT. I was initially attracted to Relay because of his strong work ethic and how dedicated he was to teaching me the ropes at my job. Our professional relationship naturally evolved into a personal one, and we started dating. After 2 years of dating, we decided to tie the knot. Our early days as newlyweds were filled with happiness, and Relay took excellent care of me. I was certain of his deep love for me. When Molly was born, he doted on her, often calling her his little angel. His affection for her was undeniable. Relay's love for Molly was so apparent that I jokingly thought he might faint if she ever mentioned getting married in the future. However, things took an unexpected turn when Molly turned about 2 years old. Relay's attitude shifted drastically. He became cold and distant, seemingly uncaring about both me and our daughter. I couldn't comprehend the sudden transformation. It weighed heavily on me, and after about a month of this behavior, I couldn't take it anymore. I confronted Relay, demanding answers. "Relay, why have you been so distant from me and Molly lately?" I asked. "Did I do something to upset you? I don't understand what's causing this change, and it's deeply troubling." I was shouting out of frustration, struggling to make sense of Relay's abrupt alteration in attitude. Relay responded calmly, dropping a bombshell. "It's because that child is not mine," he said. I was taken aback, utterly bewildered. "What? Molly is undoubtedly your daughter," I countered, attempting to reason with him. Relay remained unconvinced. "Because she doesn't look anything like me," he said. I vehemently disagreed with his assessment. Molly is only 2 years old, and it's challenging to determine her full resemblance. I'm confident that as she grows, her likeness to you will become more apparent, I reassured my husband. But Relay, in his shallow reasoning, was insistent. "No, you're wrong. She has green eyes, and they're pretty big. I have blue eyes, so it's impossible for us to have a child with beautiful green eyes like this." I was left in shock by his simplistic logic. "No, listen to me. I have green eyes, so she likely inherited them from me," I explained, hoping to convince him. However, Relay, though somewhat swayed, refused to fully accept it, likely due to his pride. "I think you're just trying to deceive me," he responded, still skeptical. I implored him, "That's not true. You have to trust me." Afterward, Relay requested some time to contemplate the situation and went back to his parents' house. During that time, I found myself questioning his thoughts and growing increasingly distrustful. I wondered whether we could build a stable family together as parents, let alone maintain our marriage. When Relay returned to his parents' home, it appeared he had presented the situation only from his perspective. His mother, Helen, contacted me and expressed her displeasure. Eventually, we held a discussion at their house, and it was decided that we would conduct a DNA test to resolve the issue conclusively. Riley initially resisted the idea, claiming that he knew without a doubt that Molly wasn't his child. Still, when I insisted on the test, he reluctantly agreed. After the results came in, it was confirmed that Molly was indeed his child. Staring at me in disbelief, Relay uttered, "You're kidding!" But my father-in-law, Pete, intervened, saying, "The results are clear. Why don't you admit your mistake and apologize to Tina?" Relay, seemingly shocked by Pete's stern words, finally came to his senses. He humbly apologized, bowing his head. "Tina, I'm sorry I doubted you. I don't know what came over me." I forgave him. For the moment, I understand that some people might consider divorce at this point. but I had chosen to be a housewife when I got married. Financially, I wasn't self-sufficient, and I didn't want to take Molly's father away from her when she was just 2 years old. Moreover, I had entered this marriage after falling in love genuinely, and I didn't want to jump into a divorce immediately. In hindsight, I would later regret not pursuing a divorce from Relay at that time. Despite the awkward atmosphere between us, we tried to maintain our married life. Slowly, we started communicating more and began feeling like a married couple, at least for the time being. However, Relay had difficulty connecting with Molly. Whenever I encouraged him to play with her, he'd respond awkwardly, saying something like, yeah, sure, before quickly passing her back to me, saying that I was better at this. In the end, Relay seldom played with Molly as she continued to grow. By the time Molly turned 5, her curiosity and interest in various topics were evident. She was an avid reader, always asking questions when she encountered something new. One day she asked about history, a subject in which Relay excelled. I suggested she pose her question to him, believing he'd provide a better response. Molly eagerly approached Relay with her inquiry. I made every effort to bridge the gap between Relay and Molly, but he continuously brushed her off, saying, "You get a better answer if you ask your mother." Molly was left perplexed, asking, "Well, who should I ask?" I approached Relay, encouraging him to engage with Molly, saying, "Molly is asking you, so you should pay more attention to her." In response, Relay callously replied, "You're there for this kind of thing, so if you're there, then there's no need for me." I was deeply dismayed by his response, wondering why he was so reluctant to spend time with Molly. It was evident that she felt a bit neglected due to her father's indifference. I was determined to find a way to bring our family closer, but Relay refused to allocate time for the family. Molly's dedication to her piano practice and studies was partly driven by her strong work ethic, but also her desire for her father's attention. My frustration with Relay continued to mount, and one night I couldn't contain it any longer. I confronted him, exclaiming, "That's enough! Why are you avoiding Molly? She's trying so hard to bond with her father. You haven't even attended her piano recital once." Relay responded as if he were being coerced into doing something he vehemently disliked. He said, "I'm letting her do whatever she wants, so I am fulfilling my role as a father. You're too strict with your own daughter." I protested, reminding him that we had undergone a DNA test. Relay remained unconvinced and retreated to his room, leaving me exasperated, wondering how to change his perspective. Amid my worries, Relay abruptly suggested, "Let's go on a family trip to Hawaii, including your parents." It was an unexpected proposal, intended for the two of us to travel together. I was overjoyed when I heard Relay's proposal. He was finally making an effort to spend time with his daughter and me. This trip to Hawaii promised to be an opportunity for Molly to create cherished memories with her father. Upon our arrival in Hawaii, Relay surprised us by revealing that he had arranged for a small yet splendid boat. The excitement of the day ahead filled us with anticipation as we set sail into the sea. Molly's bright smile mirrored the enthusiasm, and it was a heartwarming sight. Relay held a boat driving license, allowing us to embark on a voyage to a nearby deserted island that day. My father-in-law, Pete, opted to stay behind this time as he had other plans and visits to make in Hawaii. Our arrival at the deserted island left us captivated by its beauty, with Molly utterly fascinated by the pristine surroundings. Relay had prepared snorkeling gear, and he eagerly plunged into the water ahead of us. Shortly after, he invited Molly and me to join him. I watched with delight as Relay patiently guided Jessica through her first snorkeling experience. It was a moment that filled me with joy, seeing Relay gradually embrace his role as a father, and Jessica was equally delighted to have her dad teaching her. In no time, Molly began to grasp the fundamentals of snorkeling, and the pride on her face was unmistakable. Relay, taking a short break from the water, said, "I'm going to rest," and stepped out of the sea. I stayed in the water, ensuring that Molly remained safe and didn't venture too far as we enjoyed our underwater exploration together. However, as the day slipped away and the sun began to set, a sense of unease washed over me. It was at this moment that Relay's unexpected departure unfolded. His, along with my mother-in-law Helena's belongings, had vanished from the beach, and the sound of an engine revving signaled the departure of the boat. I was left in disbelief, calling out, "Hey!" as I watched Relay sail away, leaving my daughter and me stranded on the deserted island by the sea. Desperation filled me as I swam frantically towards the boat, shouting, "Why are you leaving us?" But despite my efforts, I couldn't close the gap between us. I hesitated to risk injury by reaching out to the boat. Relay's callous words, "It's not like we're related by blood anyway, so this should be fine," caught me by surprise and left me stunned. Helen peered out from the bow of the boat, laughing heartily at my dumbfounded expression. while Relay regarded me with disdain before their boat disappeared into the distance, abandoning my daughter and me on the deserted island. I rushed back to the island where Molly awaited me, her eyes wide with fear. The gravity of our situation weighed heavily on my shoulders. Stranded on a deserted island, I hugged Molly, trying to reassure her that everything would be all right. The reality, however, was grim, and even though I had some portable food that would last a day or two, it wouldn't sustain us for long. Trying to stay composed for Molly's sake, I said, "Let's warm up for now. We might catch a cold after being in the water," as I dried her hair and body with the towel I had packed. Together, we collected slender branches and dead leaves to build a fire, and fortunately, I had brought a lighter for such an occasion. The fire gradually flickered to life, providing us with warmth. Still, an underlying anxiety gnawed at me, wondering if help would ever come. Approximately 2 hours after Relay's departure, a small boat approached us. I jumped to my feet, waving my arms and repeatedly shouting for help. The boat stopped nearby, and the man on board inquired about our well-being before gesturing for us to come aboard. It turned out the man was a staff member from the boat rental shop who had provided Relay with the boat. As we settled on the boat, he began to explain the situation. The man from the boat rental shop explained that when Relay returned the boat, both he and Helen hastily left, raising his suspicions. He became concerned about the number of people who left the boat, prompting him to visit the island and ensure our safety. Relief overwhelmed me, and I couldn't hold back my tears. Molly was sleeping soundly in my arms, likely exhausted from the ordeal. We safely returned to the island where our hotel was located. After expressing our gratitude to the kind-hearted individuals who had helped us, Molly and I headed back to the hotel. In the lobby, I encountered Pete. "Oh, Tina, weren't you with my son and wife?" Pete asked, noticing my fatigued appearance. His perceptive eyes immediately grasped that something was amiss. He suggested we sit in the lounge, where I shared the harrowing events of the day. I recounted how we had been abandoned on the deserted island, and how Relay had distanced himself from Molly in recent times. Pete listened attentively, and when I finished, he lowered his head and apologized for what Relay and Helen had done to us. Pete had always been a supportive figure, the only one who consistently sought the truth during Relay's doubts about Molly's parentage, and who had always cherished his grandchild. Determined to take action, Pete proposed, "Let's teach them a lesson." I agreed, and together we approached the hotel's front desk. Fortunately, Relay and Helen had not returned to the hotel yet, most likely dining at a restaurant. Since I had made the reservation, I decided to cancel our stay, ensuring Relay and Helen wouldn't have a place to stay either. P had intended to stay at his friend's residence in the vicinity, and he had been waiting for us at the hotel to inform us about this arrangement. So P suggested, "Tina, you should come with me." And accompanied by Molly, I followed him to his friend's house. His friend and his wife warmly welcomed us upon our arrival. At that moment, Molly had awakened and was relishing a delicious homemade meal thoughtfully prepared by our gracious hosts. However, my peace was soon disrupted by a phone call indicating that Relay and Helen had run into trouble with the police. This occurred because they had caused quite a commotion due to their inability to check in at the hotel, despite having made a reservation. The hotel staff hastily reported the incident, prompting a swift response from the police. Relay and Helen vehemently protested, stating, "We made a reservation," likely fearing that they were being taken advantage of. Yet, failing to comply with the police's instructions led to their arrest. Despite their pleas for assistance, Pete and I declined to intervene on their behalf. I informed the police about how Relay and Helen had deserted Molly and me on a remote island. The authorities also obtained a statement from the boat rental shop staff, which served as evidence. Consequently, Relay and Helen faced criminal charges and found themselves in a precarious predicament. In a state of panic, my husband hastily acquired a lawyer, posted a substantial bail, and incurred significant financial losses overnight. Moreover, they spent several days in jail until they were released on bail, which left Relay and Helen both physically and emotionally drained. It was a sense of satisfaction to witness their predicament, as I couldn't help but think about how much worse our situation could have been if the boat staff hadn't come to our rescue. Molly and I returned home ahead of the others, packed our belongings, and headed to my parents' house. Upon Relay's return, I confronted him with divorce papers via my lawyer and demanded alimony to compensate for the emotional distress he had caused my daughter and me. It was during this time that, through my lawyer, I asked Relay why he had taken the actions he did, and why he had shown so little interest in his own daughter until now. According to the lawyer, Relay explained that he had abruptly lost all affection for our daughter once he began suspecting that she might not be his biological child. I was utterly appalled and shocked to hear Relay's words. Even though a proper DNA test had confirmed Molly's biological connection to him, he still couldn't believe that she was his own child. I couldn't help but regret not having separated Molly from such a horrible father much earlier. Following our divorce, Relay was legally obligated to pay alimony and child support, which left him buried in debt. Additionally, I reported this shocking incident to my former boss, who still worked for the same company. Consequently, Relay's disgraceful behavior quickly spread throughout the company, and he became widely known as the man who attempted to abandon his wife and child to their fate. It seems he is now deeply ashamed of himself. Struggling with debt, Relay was unable to quit his job, causing stress to take a toll on him. On the other hand, Pete divorced Helen because of her involvement in this incident. Helen, who had relied on Pete's salary, found herself without a job and was forced to leave their home. Desperate, she reached out to Relay for assistance, but he heartlessly refused, claiming that he couldn't afford to help her. As a result, she now resides in a modest apartment and works a part-time job. Meanwhile, I secured a new job, rented an apartment suitable for just Molly and me, and started a fresh chapter of life with my daughter. Molly no longer regards Relay as her father and wholeheartedly showers her affection and love on me. She diligently practices the piano every day and often declares, "I'm going to win the next competition for you, Mommy. I'll work hard to make money so that you, Mommy, can do what you love." Leaving them stranded on a deserted island was undeniably a crime, and I firmly believe that both Relay and Helen should be held accountable for their actions. However, I'm profoundly grateful that Pete displayed decency and compassion throughout this ordeal. I hope that Tina continues to lead a joyful and fulfilling life with her beloved daughter, Molly.